The ship disappeared. The cargo didn't. For over 2,000 years, hundreds of Roman amphorae have sat on the floor of the Mediterranean. No name, no route, no destination. And no one knows why. It all began with a report from private citizens, which led investigators to a point in the Mediterranean, about 3 miles off the coast of Mazara del Vallo, Sicily. At first, it seemed like just another find on the seabed. But when the investigation reached 46 meters deep, the scale of the discovery changed completely. It wasn't one object. It wasn't a few scattered pieces. It was hundreds of amphorae, concentrated in the same spot, along with lead elements including 2 anchor stocks and another structure of the same metal. All of it linked to the remains of a Roman shipwreck. A ship had ended its voyage right there, but it vanished without leaving behind the one thing we'd most like to know: where it came from, where it was going, and why a cargo of hundreds of vessels ended up 46 meters below the surface. Over 2,000 years later, those questions remain unanswered, and maybe that's exactly what can still tell part of this story. The first clue lies in the shape of the amphorae themselves. Preliminary identification suggests most belong to a type archaeologists called Dressel 1A. The name sounds technical, but what it offers is simple and extremely important: time. Based on this identification, the wreck has been tentatively dated to between the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE. It's not a definitive answer yet, but for the first time, that silent scene 46 meters down begins to take its place in history. An amphora wasn't just a container. Its shape could point to the kind of goods it carried, where it was made, and the trade networks it belonged to. Dressel 1 amphorae are mainly linked to a commodity that circulated widely in that world: wine. That makes the scene far more interesting, but it also demands caution. The link to wine doesn't prove these specific amphorae held wine. Without direct residue analysis, that possibility has to stay exactly that: a possibility. Even so, it changes how we look at the wreck. Because maybe we're not just looking at pieces of pottery. Maybe we're looking at the remains of a large-scale commercial cargo. This is the late Roman Republic's Mediterranean, and Sicily held a strategic position within a space crossed by goods and people. Dressel 1 amphorae show up scattered across the entire Western Mediterranean, which means finding this type of amphora doesn't hand us a route. The more we understand the world these vessels moved through, the more we realize how many paths could be involved. It's tempting to look at this scene and draw a line, a port of departure, a route, a destination. But that line doesn't exist yet. We don't know its home port. We don't know its destination. We don't know why it sank. We don't know the crew. We don't know who owned the cargo. Even the contents of the amphorae haven't been confirmed. We also don't know how much of the hull survived beneath the sediment, or whether any surviving marks or inscriptions will yield useful clues. At first glance, that list of unknowns might seem frustrating, but this is exactly where discovery turns into investigation, because every gap points to something that can still be searched for. So far, we've been asking a pretty natural question: where was this ship going? But look at the field of amphorae again. Hundreds of vessels, a single transport operation. And suddenly, another question arises. Not just where this ship was going, but what world needed this ship to be traveling at all? If that turn caught you off guard, drop a like. It really helps the channel keep bringing you stories like this. Because a cargo doesn't begin when it's loaded onto a ship. Before that vessel set sail, something had to be produced. Vessels had to be made. Goods had to be packed. The cargo had to be organized. Transport had to exist. And each of those steps points to people. We don't know their names, we can't invent them. But we don't need to invent anyone to recognize that they existed. Potters made the containers. Other people organized the cargo. Sailors steered the ship. Merchants were tied to the movement of the goods. And somewhere other people were waiting for it to arrive. On their own, each amphora is an archaeological object. Together, preserved within the context of a shipwreck, they belong to the same transport operation. The relationship between them matters. Their arrangement matters. Their typology matters. Where they were found matters. Because a shipwreck can freeze something that rarely survives intact. A moment of circulation. A cargo that was in motion, and suddenly wasn't. And maybe this is where we can finally understand what was found off Mazara del Vallo. Not just hundreds of amphorae, Not just a lost Roman vessel, but an archaeological context that can help reconstruct how goods moved across the Mediterranean, and with them, the connections between the people who made that movement possible. Go back for a moment to the first image, 46 meters below the surface, hundreds of amphorae, motionless on the seafloor. Nothing about that scene has changed, but now they mean something else. At first, they were the mystery. Then, they became clues. Now, they begin to reveal people with no known names, no faces we can reconstruct. And still, people whose activity left enough material traces to cross more than 2,000 years. The voyage failed. The human system that made it possible disappeared long ago, but part of its evidence remained on the floor of the Mediterranean. We still don't know its exact route. We still don't know its destination. We still don't know why it sank. And preserving these questions matters just as much as searching for their answers, because the investigation is only just beginning. If you enjoy following discoveries like this, where small pieces of evidence reveal entire worlds, subscribe to Rediscovered Secrets and turn on notifications. Because we may never be able to write out every detail of this final voyage, but that doesn't make the field of amphorae any less important. It makes what survived even more precious. If you enjoy mysteries where an object turns up exactly where it shouldn't be, check out The Coin That Shouldn't Be Here, a Moroccan coin found inside a shipwreck off the coast of England 400 years ago, still unexplained today.